Hey, this is David Hayter. You may know me as the screenwriter of films like X-Men, X-Men 2, and Watchmen, but you probably know me best as the voice of Solid Snake from Metal Gear Solid. And you're listening to Hawaii's #1 podcast, the Kasanova Podcast. Kept you waiting, huh?
This wasn't written with your comfort in mind. Nah. Made my decision, wasn't tough to decide. Nah. Me and my boys, we get it done every time. Gotta earn it, you can't just jump in the line. You'll get rushed to the side. I top my division, I've been building since I started. In the parking lot, I parked it. I came in while picking targets. My career cannot be tarnished. I'm a champion regardless. Celebrate, but this a different kind of lucha party. We are not alike. I don't want your advice, I don't want your opinions. It's not gonna be different from the ones I told to listen. I've been working on a bigger picture and y'all ain't impressing me. Hey, como said D, say shut your mouth, respect the legacy. Ain't no comparisons, y'all just embarrassments. All of my confidence is rooted in my heritage. Yo, and with Mendoza and Mr. Wild, we showing what this about. Phantom driver, your career is disavowed. What's happening, y'all?
All right, and welcome everyone to another episode of Hawaii's #1 podcast, the Kasanova Podcast. I'm your host, Mikhail Kasanova, and today I'm joined by the one, the only, the phenomenal Tomm Hulett. Tom, how you doing?
I'm all right. How are you?
Doing good, man. I'm just enjoying this. Actually, for the first time this summer, a cool summer where it's not hot. Because you only have 3 temperatures in Hawaii. It's hot, super hot, and high as hell. And right now, it's none of the 3. So
You're lucky. We've got one of our hotter days so far. So,
ooh, any like breeze going through, or is it just
not today? It's just 102 straight.
100? Oh yeah. I'm sorry.
All good.
Oh man, so Tom, we're here to talk about your upcoming game, Spidersaurs. I've been thoroughly enjoying it. I've been playing it on the Steam Deck. I've been really enjoying it, and yeah, we're gonna dive into that. Do you want to, I guess, talk about yourself a little bit, your history with gaming, and hey,
sure, yeah, yeah. So I've been playing games since I was just a little kid, but I've been in the industry since I was 12.
Mm-hmm.
We had a neighbor that worked at Virgin Games, and they they're a European development company at the time, so they made really hard games, kind of what they did back then, in Europe. So they got a lot of complaints from their marketing department that kids couldn't beat their games on Genesis and Super Nintendo. So they found out I could get past level 3 on Battletoads, and they hired me to do testing 1 day a week.
You know how rare that is?
So I showed up and tested, and they said, see, kids can beat our games. He beat this game 3 times today. And from there, I did that for a couple summers, and then from there I made my own independent company in high school. Before there were indie companies, we tried to make a Game Boy Color RPG, and then that led me to Atlas, where I did some localization, and then I jumped to Konami, and then I jumped to WayForward, and I've been there ever since.
Awesome. And as far as like gaming, what's your favorite? So if you had to pick your top 3 favorite games of all time, what would they be?
I have this written down. I gotta find it. No, Breath of the Wild is number 1.
Okay.
Undertale's number 2, and Earthbound is number 3.
You can't go wrong there. That's all excellent choices. I wish we would get like Mother 3 localized. I know there's a lot of red tape for that, but man, Mother 3 is so good.
I got lucky, and I bought it. I bought the Japanese copy, so I legally emulated it. And I had a Game Boy Color cartridge, or Game Boy Advance Game Boy Advance cartridge, and so I got to burn it onto a cart. So I actually, back then the emulators were kind of bad. You got the lag, so you couldn't get the battle system right. But I got it on a real cart, so that's one of my treasures of my
Nice.
little Earthbound shrine. I've got like, Mother 1 and 2, Earthbound in the box, and then this little cartridge for Mother 3, and then my Mother 3 mini behind it. So
nice.
I'm a big fan.
Do you think we'll ever get like the Earthbound franchise coming back? And like,
I mean, ever since like they did Earthbound Beginnings on the Wii U, and they brought it back on Switch. So I think we're not going to lose what we have. I think Nintendo kind of figured out like these fans are kind of rabid. We might want to keep them happy. I hold out hope for 3 eventually somehow that they'll just be like, we had to delay all our games. What do we do for this next direct? And then they like have like a button, and they're like, okay, push the Mother 3 button.
I saw that direct that they did today, and I was like, oh, I never would have thought we would have gotten Nier Automata on the Switch. I didn't even think it could. Well, I figured it could possibly run it, but it would come with a lot of like compromises. But it looks really good. Like, I'm really shocked at how good it looks and runs. And then they're like, oh yeah, Persona, here you go. So all you Nintendo fans have been asking for Persona for like the last 5-6 years, here you go. So
I'm never gonna get through Persona 5 unless I've got it on my Switch. So I'm glad that I have that option now, because I just
same
can't.
here.
RPGs take too long now.
They do. It is so funny because, like, in my Discord group, I have a lot of people that'll hit me up like, "Hey, Mikhail, did you play this RPG? Did you play that RPG?" And I'm like, I have a 2-year-old. So, like, when you have kids, your window for gaming, it just keeps shrinking. And it's like, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah.
I used to love RPGs, and then I just can't now, man. You get like one a year, and it's so much of my time that I can't do another one right after it. So I got to wait, and then, parenting and all that stuff. It's got no time. I spent 4 months on Elden Ring, and it was worth it. But now I'm like, give me all the tiny games. I just want small 5-hour games, please.
Oh man, you're lucky, because like when I was playing, like I still need to play Elden Ring, because every time I tried to start it, I was like, okay, my daughter's asleep, let me try to like get to this area, and then she would wake up and I'd be in the middle of a fight and I had to put the controller, and you can't pause. For anyone who's watching who hasn't played Elden Ring or any of the Soul style games, you can't pause them because they're all in real time, and it's like, yep, all that progress gone, just gone.
Yeah, when my son was little, I got into Bloodborne. That was my first FromSoft game. And as long as he was asleep, it was fine. But like you said, when they wake up and you're in the middle of a boss, you're like, I gotta choose. I've been fighting this guy for a long time, but my son is a child.
Yeah. So as far as like Spidersaurs goes, for people who are not familiar with what it is basically, I like to describe it as, it's kind of like an evolution of Contra mixed with like a Saturday morning cartoon vibe and that WayForward charm and charisma, and it's addictingly fun. So when you guys are coming up with the idea for, I guess, a new IP and just the direction of it, what was like the genesis thought of what you were going to do?
Sure. So, I mean, at WayForward, we worked on Contra 4 on the Nintendo DS. Back when I was at Konami, I hired WayForward, and so I was familiar with a lot of the people, and now I'm here, and so they let me direct the new Contra type game, which was cool. Matt Bozon, our creative director, had been thinking about what we could do in the genre for a while, and dinosaurs kept coming up, so that was an element. But then he really likes, like you said, Saturday morning cartoons from like the 80s. And then I
miss those.
I watched him in the 90s. I'm a little bit younger than him, and I watched him longer than I should. So kind of a common ground we have of the shows that are there to sell toys and cereal and other nonsense. They're not really made to be to say anything deep.
Yeah.
Not like today's cartoons. yeah, so we had these kind of ideas swirling around, and with the Apple Arcade stuff, we had an opportunity to make a new IP. So Matt kind of put together the basics and then said, go make a run and gun shooter. And so we really tried to look at what are creative spider plus dinosaur creatures we could make, because I think that would be a fun, just fun, colorful, weird. It's a new enemy, so from a game standpoint, you're like, oh, what does this thing do? How do I beat it? But then from a fun kid brain perspective, you're like, what is this thing? Like, he's crazy looking, or he makes a funny sound, or he goes splat when I kill him. So stuff like that. Just keep it interesting and fun, and throw new stuff at the player, and then just continue to explore kind of that Contra style game. And the player control is very similar to Contra, like you said, but I tried to draw on a lot of other run and gun shooters in the game. So, we've got things a little more reminiscent of Cuphead from time to time, some Metal Slug type stuff. I just try to pull in all the different shooters. So if you're a fan of non-Contra run and guns, I think there's something for you too. So everyone should check it out.
Yeah, it definitely felt also like some Gunstar Heroes vibes as well from the game. I was like, man, that game. I wish that franchise would come back.
Yeah, it had a certain feel to it, a little edgy, but like I just think of all the a million guys. Like, you'd see the commander shouting, and then all the guys run in, and you're just fighting the sea of guys. So that's a good. Yeah, there's some of that in there too.
What I really liked about what I played so far from this early build is that the balance of the difficulty, depending on regardless of which difficulty you select, it's fair. Even if you go to the harder difficulty, it's challenging, but it's still fair, and that's something you don't usually see in the run and gun genre. Usually, it's just, hey, we're gonna throw everything at you. Survive.
Yeah, this is some of my, we worked on Contra 4. We all have some Contra 4 baggage, that stuff we didn't get to or we didn't have time. And one of my things that, I remember I actually got into a shouting match with someone who's now my boss back in the day about difficulty shouldn't just be turning a dial up, where it's like, okay, everybody has 10% more hit points, or everybody's 20% faster, or whatever. When you have time, because you don't always have time in game development, but when you have time, it should be more finesse than that. You kind of have to tailor make each level for each difficulty. And so we didn't have that time for Contra 4, and it turned out great, and everyone loved it, and that makes me happy. But my baggage was, you should be able to finesse each level. And so with Spidersaurs, we did have that time, and I made sure my level designers were really thinking about each different skill set. So a new players who haven't played this type of game before, we're not sacrificing it. You're not getting a watered down run and gun. So it's still, if you beat it, it still counts, right? You did a cool thing in a hard genre, and you're getting a taste of what that genre is. But if you play it on hard, it shouldn't just be we made everybody take longer to kill. It should be different challenges and different, power-ups come in different spots, or they're maybe not power-ups that make it as easy mode, things like that. So I'm glad you noticed that. That's really cool. That is something we tried to put in there, so hopefully everybody agrees with you.
Well, it's just one thing that I've noticed, and going back to playing the original Contra, playing Metal Slug, Ikari Warriors, all these running on games, is I feel like, because you and I are from the same era roughly, and it's for us growing up, games was okay, you learn how to play the game, you tailor towards its intricacies and whatnot, and so I understand that the generation now is very, very different. And also it's just our attention is being pulled in so many different directions now. So it's the younger generation that's playing games like this, and others are like, okay, so I need it to tell me what I need to do. I need this tutorial. I need this. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's interesting, I guess, from my perspective. I'm like, oh, I took time to learn this stuff, but you guys like, nope, show me. So, I think, they're more critical when it comes to games because it's like, okay, it needs to be balanced, it needs to be fair. Am I going to invest my time into this? And so seeing how like balanced this game is and, the variety that's in it, I think this generation is really, really going to love it. And I think, people from our generation before are also going to love it because, the characters are, I could definitely see the characters not only in a Saturday morning cartoon, but they make me think of characters from like the late 80s, early 90s, like video games. It's just, Victoria is really awesome of a character. Adrian is like, he's such a funny character. And then the voice actors nail the delivery so well. So it's like,
we in Contra 4, we actually, to your thing about new generations of gamer, we did a little mini focus test. We had a, what was he? One of our mobile directors at Konami. He also taught at like a school. He did like a game dev summer program for kids, and so he's like, "Hey, do you want to bring these kids in, and they can test Contra because it's an old school." This is for people who don't know or kind of forgot. Contra 4 came out right after New Super Mario Brothers, so it was that like we hadn't quite accepted that old games had value that like everyone could play. So it was like, well, you're making this old game, we should have some kids play it. Mm-hmm. We were watching these kids play it, and I remember none of them would select easy. We told them like, hey, if it's hard, you can, we want you to see more of the game, so please set it easy. None of them was set easy. But they were all playing it, and we told them the controls, and they were playing, and we were like 30 minutes, 40 minutes into this test, and one of the kids was like, guys, when you're ducking, you can still shoot. And I was like, wait, what? Like this is so alien to these kids that it's like a cool discovery that you can duck and shoot. Whereas when we were playing as kids, you're like, okay, duck, shoot. Like, we'd try it out, we'd figure it out. So that was an eye-opener then, and it's kind of stuck with me. But I actually think kids today, compared to 15 years ago, right? Mm-hmm. Kids today now have indie games, which pull in a lot of the old school concepts. They've got like games done quick, like speed runs, where people are showing all these insane things that aren't even intended, but like experiment with games because you could fly through this wall. Mm-hmm. And then just a wide, like, games are a little even cooler. Like when we were kids, they weren't cool, and they get cooler and cooler each year. Yeah. So now they're just a normal thing you do. Like there's games that are popular and other games that are less popular, and kids know all this stuff. But I think they're more exposed to multiple genres. So I feel like to a kid, they're gonna understand the mechanics of Spidersaurs better than the Contra 4 kids did. They're just exposed to more of it, and it's interesting that ebb and flow of, games started where we were, then they were like first-person shooters when these Contra 4 kids were kids, and now it's like everything. Like you got your Fortnites, which mixes a bunch of stuff. You've got people still play Mario Kart, which is great. It's just interesting. I'm fascinated by it. Like just the ebb and flow of games. It's crazy.
And to add to that, it's just interesting seeing how like gaming now is so socially acceptable, compared to like when we were growing up and playing it. And it's like, I think I was talking to it was either my niece or my nephew, and they're talking because they're really crazy about Fortnite, and they love what's the other game they like playing? They love the Bloodstain franchise. So they're like, oh, this is so great, this is so cool, and then they're talking to their friends about it, and I'm like, man, I wish I had that growing up. I couldn't talk to anybody. It's like, oh, you like gaming? Nerd. Could shove you in the closet. Like it's so like it just being able to go like step in the DeLorean and go back in the past and just think about how things were so different then. And segueing over to like another topic of like how I've heard this argument from like a lot of content creators where they say like games now are not as creative as they used to be. And I'm like, no, that's not true. They're still very creative, but you had to look at like the hardware they were working on back then. You know, the NES, Super Nintendo, the Sega Genesis. They had limitations, so they had to work around that. They couldn't have the old voice dialogue and the super long cutscenes. Like if you go back and play Metal Gear Solid, yeah, it's technical marvel, but it's crazy to think like how that aged compared to like something like Win Back, Covert Ops, or something like that. You know, like it's just like they work with their limitations, and it's like now we've got the technology to create that cinematic experience that also still has that gameplay experience, and it's just, you know. That's why I find game design so fascinating. So like when I get to talk to like you and Alex Rusty and others I've had on the show, like I'd love to just pick your brain about that process because it's fascinating, because it's like I have no experience with game development, but like as a kid growing up, I was like, man, how did that work? How did you come up with this? What was the genesis of doing this? And it's fascinating to me, you know, and I feel like if more, and I'm tailoring this because it's something we talked about, more content creators understood the process, they'd have a better appreciation for it, because it's not as simple as people think it is.
Yep. Yeah. What I've been kind of thinking about a lot through Spidersaurs and other games that I'm working on is like on the Genesis or the Super Nintendo, you'd get stuff like Gunstar Heroes, which we mentioned, do these crazy technical tricks, like rotating things or moving really fast or having a reflection. That was like crazy back then. You're like, oh my gosh, like in Rocket Knight, I can see myself in the water, and I'm jumping over the water because I'm watching the water, not my character. My character, I can't see him.
I miss Rocket Knight.
And like now, that's just reflection. You like check a box. You're like, this surface has reflection on it. So it's hard in old school games where you're kind of thinking of these cool tricks and why is this boss cool? What cool thing does this boss do? How do we get that feeling that those little tricks used to do? Because again, you know, someone would think, well, he's made of crystals. What if he reflected the visuals? And that was some crazy technical thing that shouldn't have been possible, but Treasure did it, or whoever did it. And now that doesn't exist. So how can we convey that? What's the cool boss thing that other games couldn't do? Or now it's like, what didn't they think of? Because they can do it, like especially if you're on PC, you can do whatever you want. But like what's that cool thing? So that's something I think about a lot when I'm designing old school games now is what's that thing? Like how can we piece together tech, and it's a tech trick, but everyone has the same basic toolboxes now. For old school games, for crazy things like Last of Us, they're developing all sorts of what's the hose physics or whatever. So that's different. But in the old school space, what's the idea? What's the cool thing that's going to make people say wow? So that's where I'm at.
Cool. How do you feel about the fact that like old school gaming over the last 15 or so years is, at this point, 16, 17 years? It's good Lord, that's a long time. Anyway, and it's crazy. Like, do you ever have moments like that when you like look back and it's like, 15, 16, 20 years, 25 years, and it's like, that doesn't feel that long ago, but like it is, and you can remember like kind of what you were doing in it. Wow.
The one that killed me is, again, we're thinking about Contra 4 a lot because we just released Spidersaurs, and Contra 4 was 2007, and we released that for Contra's 20th anniversary. So Contra, when we released that, when I first worked with WayForward, Contra was 20 years old, and then last month Shantae, WayForward's mascot, turned 20. So Shantae is as old now as Contra was back then. Like, no, that's impossible. But It's true.
It's great. It's so great. Like, I remember when Shantae first came out on Game Boy Color. I remember reading like the promotional material for it in Nintendo Power back. Oh my goodness, Nintendo Power. Yeah, okay. I'm on memory lane right now. It's crazy when you think about like game magazines because they don't really do that much. Do they still have those? Like, I know
I mean,
like
they
there's
exist. I see them, but I don't know what's in them.
yeah, like it's. I feel like it's way different, like in comparison to like we used to have like Next Gen Gamer, EGM, Game Pro magazine, Nintendo Power, VGM. Like there's just so many. Like, I remember the excitement of going to like the stores and just going to the magazine aisle and just reading the magazines. So that's how you knew. Like for the kids nowadays, yeah, that's how we found out what was coming out. It was either TV commercials, which really until I want to say the PlayStation era wasn't as common as it was prior to, and reading magazines because that's where you learned what was coming out, and then you could pre-order through mail order back in the day in a lot of games like Castlevania Bloodletting, which never came out, and I remember I saved up all my summer allowance at the time to order that. Yeah.
You'd have your friends would make stuff up. That they'd be like, Zelda 8's coming out. You're like, Zelda 8? No way. You're like, no, I got Game Pro. It doesn't say anything about that. You're like, I heard about it from my friend.
Oh man, kids have it so they have it so good these days. Oh my goodness, especially like with games having patches now, and we had to deal with like, oh yeah, that's a bug. We just work with that. I guess going back to Spidersaurs, there's one of the things that I really like that you guys incorporated into that is the 3-bar health system. That is something you don't typically see in the run and gun genre. And what inspired you to include that?
We definitely wanted to make it more accessible for novice players and get them into run and guns. Because the genre is really, really small compared to some other ones, like let's say Metroidvanias. Let's say there's plenty of Metroidvanias, but there's not a lot of run and gun shooters. And so, we wanted some kind of health system anyway, but we looked at Contra Hardcore on the Genesis, and the Japanese version actually had the 3-bar health system, which was weird, and it felt wrong to play. Because we were used to the American version, but we kind of just took that and ran with it, and added in health power-ups as well, which isn't traditional to the genre necessarily. So, even if you take damage, you can refill your health, and then and just along the same lines, we also added a shield. Each character has a shield weapon that essentially is a trade-off. So you normally have 2 weapons and you can swap back and forth. If you have the shield, one of your slots becomes a shield, and it'll be on your character. It'll break. It has a cooldown. It'll come back. But then you only have like your other weapon. So you've got 1 weapon but a shield. But we wanted to give people that option. So if you're not as skilled at the genre, or you're just learning a level, or you have that safety net. So we felt like all those things should, again, it's all about keeping it authentic. We're not watering down the experience, but just giving you some things where you're like, oh, okay, well, when I'm better, I might never pick up a shield because I don't need it. But now I might always want my shield because, it just gives me that extra couple hits that I'm not going to be constantly dying.
Okay. And I found the weapon variety as well, because the weapon variety is very unique. Like, it's not something that you'll get some similarities to weapons that you would pick up in Contra, but there's a lot of creativity in the weapons, and I like the fact that you gain more of the same type, it powers it up, and you get hit. It kind of reminded me of Castlevania Adventure. When you get hit, you start to your weapon weakens and goes back to its base form after, depending on how many power-ups you pick up. If you see like you got 2, then you get 2 hits and you're back to the base form. I really liked that. So it's the constant risk versus reward that you're dealing with. So
yeah, and that's something that the life bar let us do. Is you take a hit, you get a little weaker, but you don't lose your weapon because when you die, the weapon goes away. So
yeah,
it's just another aspect of that.
Yeah, definitely. When it came to the creating the characters, Adrian and Victoria, and also coming up with like the concept of ingest and I guess the world, the background lore, how long did that take? And what was?
Yeah, so Matt Bozon came up with the general beats. So Victoria and Adrian existed, and Ingest was this company that obviously developed Spidersaurs as a futuristic food source to solve environmental collapse because dinosaurs are big and spiders have lots of legs. Okay, everyone knows that. So I had these characters, and he said, Victoria's weapon is her guitar, and Adrian has a sports-themed gun. Go. And so then I kind of had to come up with the weapons, which is, you're balancing not just what does the weapon do, but they each have their own, like the mechanics of each weapon type is different based on which character you're using. So I had to figure out, here's all the types of guns we can have in a running gun, and now which ones go to whom, and then how are they themed? Like, which sports gun, which ball, is it an exploding football or is it a bouncing tennis ball? And then how does the music look for Victoria shooting stuff out of a guitar? So, that's the first step. And then Matt developed the 4 ingest characters. They're like scientist chef people. And then
they're so funny too.
I'd had kind of ideas like, how do I want the story to be? How do I want the I don't know what you call them, side characters, I guess. How do I want the side characters to act? And so that once he gave me the characters we'd have, to work with, I could kind of figure out. There's one guy that's nervous about everything. He's always freaked out. There's one of them's a really sweet lady, but then she like has these explosive, like she shouts at you. She gets really excited and just starts yelling. And then the CEO is kind of this spacey, he means well, but he doesn't quite understand the severity of Spidersaurs got loose and they're rampaging through the building. And so then it's, then we have these funny personalities, and then it's just bouncing them off each other. So by then, we've come up with these levels. We know kind of what our bosses are, and then it's just piecing together the story based on all these elements. So we know we have to get from point A to point B. We know we've got these creative, colorful people to interact with, and then just how does that work? So how long it took? It's just little bits throughout the process. Like I'm always thinking about the story in the background while we're figuring out the core gameplay. And then just once we'll get a chance to like, okay, let's figure out the script, or let's figure out the the call out dialogue during gameplay. Like what are the 2 characters going to say in reaction to everything that happens? It's pretty quick then, because it's like way back here. It's like, okay, time to focus on it. And then I usually bang it out in a couple days. But it's a lot of fun. It's always fun to think about and watch how they develop.
So with the art style, which is very, very vivid, when you're in gameplay, is that all hand drawn? Because it's really, really well animated. It made me think kind of like of Streets of Rage 4 and also the Shantae series as well.
Yeah, so a lot of it is hand animated, but we also, there's a large amount of animation. Animation takes a while. So there's a program called Spine as well that lets you, like the basic version is it lets you take a 2D image and rig it up like a 3D character.
Oh,
so
wow.
then it has bones like a 3D character would. So you're moving like, I'm going to move my arms, and you move the arms of a 2D image. And it does a bunch of fancy things to make it kind of work. And then once you've done that, you finesse it so it doesn't look like some games use it to make really puppet looking characters.
Mm-hmm.
Which it suits their visual style, so it's fine. I'm not saying that as a derogatory thing, but we're trying to get that smooth hand drawn look, even if it's not. So that was where a lot of the work went into. So we'd have hand drawn stuff, and then we had some people who got really skilled at using spine. But then even once you animate it, you've got to go in and say like, okay, well, this looks a little bit weird, or this leg wouldn't just move like that, so we'd need to draw a new leg animation. So it's all a bit beyond me, other than how it works. I couldn't do it at all. But we've got lots of cool, skilled people at WayForward that got really good at it. So,
Cool.
And then on bosses, the cool thing about it is, on old Contra games, the bosses were puppet, like they made up shapes. Like you think of the Genesis ones, they'd have 5 balls made their arm, and back then it gave you this really smooth, cool movement that wasn't possible otherwise. And so now we could take it, make some pieces in spine, and be like, there's our authentic puppet boss. He feels like a Contra boss because he moves like that, and it's pretty simple to do. So yeah, I'm glad you like how it looks.
Yeah, like the stage 2 boss, it really reminded me of that boss from Contra, where it's like you climb to the top of the fort and then it's got the arms moving around. And I like the innovation in that character, where it's like, oh, let me grab this test tube, put it together here. And it's like, I like the mechanic of that fight, because like, yeah, you could just focus on trying to kill the boss and just shooting the boss, but you could also, like, to help yourself deal with like the ads or additional enemies, you need to kind of shoot what he's mixing, or so that you don't get something that's really difficult, because some of them might rush you, some of them gonna jump, some are gonna fly and then swoop down at you. It really takes the formula and just tosses it on his head, and I love it, because I was like, okay, when I initially got to it, I was like, oh, I know this fight. And then it's like, when it started doing that, I was like, oh, okay, it's okay, so here's a pattern. When he's done doing that, drops his arm, swings, drops the other arm, swing. Okay, so I can jump over that. Oh, but I still need to deal with this additional enemy. So I love what you guys did with that, because I was like, yeah, that really kept me on my toes.
Cool. Yeah, I'm glad you like him. We tried to give him his own personality too. Like you've acted it out a couple times, but he mixes the enemies in a test tube, but it's like a bartender type guy.
Yeah.
And he came together really well. I'm happy with him.
So with developing the game, because this is going to be on all platforms, I guess, with your experience with game development, is it now more of a streamlined process when you're making like your game and then being able to put it on multiple platforms versus before, where it's like, okay, we need to tailor it to this platform, tweak it to this one? Or if we go even further back, it was like games that went on the Genesis and Super Nintendo were not the same name, different game. But do you feel like it's because of the technology of the consoles, it's easier to port to multiple platforms now?
Yeah, it's definitely easier than it was. As much as someone who had both 16-bit systems, I loved when they were different games, right? Because you could, they were totally, the art was usually the same. Like Konami would use the same sprites, but you'd get a totally new game experience. So I did love that as a player, but as a director, it kind of scares me. I'm glad we don't have to do that. I'd like the resources to do it, but I don't think we'd get them. So. It's definitely something where, using Unreal or Unity, it makes it a lot easier, because, obviously when a new console comes out, they rush to get it all buttoned up so you can make games on the platform. Spidersaurs use the same engine as Shantae, our own proprietary engine. So, Shantae has already been ported to everything. So, it's all there working.
Mm-hmm.
There's obviously, obviously it's not, you don't just hit a button and it prints out all the games. So you do have to test it and figure it out for each platform, but it is I'm glad I'm doing it now and not 20 years ago.
As an example for the audience who's listening and watching, if you were to play, say, Sparkster on the Super Nintendo versus Sparkster on the Sega Genesis, same name, same art assets, completely different games. They didn't play anything like each other, and which it makes me think when people now, this generation now, talks about the console war between PlayStation, Nintendo, and Sony, and it's like, no, it's really not. It's just what controller do you want? It's not like back then where it was like you were either a Sega kid or you were a Nintendo kid, or if you had the PC Engine or the Atari Jaguar. If you were fortunate enough to have the Neo Geo, I don't think I met anyone who had a Neo Geo back then. But
like today, like you said, Nier Automata just got announced for Switch, and that's exciting. And it means people who didn't play it get to play it, or people who were waiting to couldn't play it portably, now they can play it on their Switch. But back then, that would mean like, hey, we have a Nier game that you can't play. I bet you wish you had a Super Nintendo, but you'd still be thinking like, oh, I wish I played the Genesis one because I don't know anything about it. Like, it's so weird. It's weird to think about. It really was a totally different. You were getting totally different games.
Yeah. I guess in wrapping up and being respectful of your time, is there anything you'd like to actually? Before I say that, here's a question: is it possible for this game to have online co-op?
It's just local couch co-op.
Okay.
But there is a Steam. Does Steam still have that thing where you can it's like fake internet?
The share,
just like couch co-op. I don't know how it works.
Yeah,
that might be possible. I haven't done it myself, but
okay.
For Steam users, that might be feasible.
Okay. I know I was when I was interviewing Alex Rushdie, we were talking about Dawn of the Monsters. We were talking about how a lot of gamers want not couch co-op, online co-op on almost every game, but they don't really understand the technical difficulties of doing that. It's not just, just put this code in. There's a lot that goes into like that aspect of it. So I just wanted to ask that because out of curiosity, because I'm fine with local co-op, and if a game has online co-op, cool. It's not necessary. I think maybe that's a generational thing. Like I'm happy with whatever. I remember when you only got games 2 times a year, and usually it's your birthday and Christmas. Now it's like you got games dropping every other day,
and some of them are like $5. It's good.
Yeah, it's like
with online now, you really have to build it like the whole game from the very beginning, like to make it not easy, but to make it easier on the team, it really has to be done from everything. Because the way stuff loads, the way assets are played, it depends on that. So any game that starts the online process mid development, like it's a huge undertaking.
Mm-hmm.
It would be nice if it was possible in every game, because I think it would be cool. But for Spidersaurs, our goal is really to let parents and their children have that. Parents can pass on that Contra 2-player experience to their children, right? It's like, hey, I used to sit here with your uncle or with my buddy or whoever, and we played this game, and he stole all my lives on the waterfall, whatever it is, and kind of handing that to your kids. So you've got this fun cartoon game. Your kids can experience running guns. You can relive your glory days, or tell them how easy bosses used to be, whether or not that's true. But really pass that to the next generation. So couch co-op made a lot of sense. So yeah, that's why it's there. But hopefully the Steam thing works. I don't know.
Yeah. I'll definitely test it out, because I was fortunate to be able to get 2 Steam Decks. I got one for myself and one for my wife, and we'll definitely test that out and see if that works, because honestly, and that's something else, like the Steam Deck is just, I love the Switch, but the Steam Deck is like, I think if Nintendo does another, well, undoubtedly they're working on the successor to the Switch. And it's so funny, like when people are like, oh, well, they're not going to start working on a new Switch until 2 years from now. And it's like, no, whenever something comes out, they're already working on the successor. It's like, okay, we could tweak this, we could add this in, we could take that out. It's always in the works, but I feel like the Steam Deck is good because it showcases that you can have AAA and powerful and indie games all running seamlessly on one piece of hardware. And I think Nintendo, just like every other company, they take what they see and they're like, oh, okay, we can use that, we can incorporate that. And I think it could be good for like inspiring them for the next whatever they're going to do. But yeah, I've been playing Spidersaurs on my Steam Deck. Absolutely love it. And I'll definitely test out that. I think it's Steam Link Play. So, I'll definitely test that out, and I'll let you know how that works.
Yeah, thanks.
So, is there anything you'd like to leave the audience with before we go? Anything. It could be Spidersaurs related. It could be, the game you're playing. Have you done some crazy stuff in like Breath of the Wild? Like, have you seen all the stuff people are doing? They're still with that physics engine.
Nothing crazy compared to what I've seen. Yeah, it's I don't know. we're like 5 years out. We're still seeing like stuff you never knew about in Brave of the Wild. Like, still, really? What do I want to leave people with? I don't know. Just echoing kind of what you said. Like, it's really never been better. Like, gaming's never been better. Like, you've never had more options. There's something for everybody. Mm-hmm. So, just enjoy your games and be nice to each other. That's my message.
No, I co-sign that. And where can people find you on social media?
The best place would be on Twitter. I'm at HypnoCrit. Mm-hmm. Like Hypno Crit.
Okay.
And yeah.
All right. I'll leave links to that down below, as well as links to Spidersaurs, because it's something I think you guys definitely enjoy. But Tomm, thank you for your time today. I know we were supposed to have done this podcast last week, but I had a situation with my daughter, and I appreciate you, being able to work with that little pop up. Oh, you have kids, you know how that goes. So I appreciate you being able to work with me, and we'd be able to reschedule this and get this going. It's been an absolute honor having you on the show. I'd love to have you back on if you'd be willing to, and talk about more gaming, like gaming from our era, and how it's just radically changed. And
yeah, man, anytime. It's been a lot of fun.
Definitely. And with that being said, if you guys enjoyed this episode of the Kasanova Podcast, let us know. If you're watching on YouTube, comment down below. If you're listening on any of the platforms, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, whatever, I think this is on everything. Just, leave a rating down below and tell us what you think. And all that being said, we will catch you guys on the next one. Tomm and I are signing out, and we hope you have a good rest of your day. Mahalo for your time for listening to this episode of the Kasanova Podcast, number one podcast in Hawaii. If you found this episode to be incredibly enjoyable, informative, or if there's anything you gain from it, or any insight, or anything that's good that you really, really enjoyed, make sure whatever platform you're listening to it on, or if you're watching it, leave a comment if that's available on the platform, like it, share it around with someone you think would enjoy it, and give us some feedback, because your feedback is exactly what we need to keep this show going. And if you're wondering what are some ways that you could support the show, we got various ways. We've got Patreon, we have channel memberships over on YouTube, as well as Subscribestar, Coffee, and so much more. Links for everything will be in the description of the podcast, so make sure you go check that out. And with all that being said, I hope you have an aloha rest of your day.
Let them know that I'm next level. I'm a whole new kind of guy. Yeah. Yes, at the top spot in case you forgot. ones that got the block hot, bullet got the shot.